Good evening, Tranonawa. Macharjagalair Fud na Crinne. It's Misha Anton. This is Live Irish Myths, episode number 220. Hope you're all keeping well. It's a bank holiday here in Ireland. It is Easter Monday. I hope you all had a nice Easter, if that's the sort of thing you celebrate. Um, Wherever you are in the world, you're very welcome. It is a bright evening here in the Boyne Valley, and as you know, recently we sprung forward, so that means that the daylight is still shining into the library here in the Boyne Valley, where the sky is blue, but we've had heavy showers today, very heavy showers. I was at Douth this afternoon with some friends, and we managed to avoid the showers for about an hour and three quarters, and then the heaviest hail shower I've seen in a long time came down. Hope everybody is well. Please do feel free if you're dropping in. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching on either Facebook or YouTube, please do feel free to join in the chat. I might ask somebody to share the stream from the Mythical Ireland Facebook page to the Mythical Ireland community and Mythical Ireland creatives, if somebody's able to do that. Auntie Joe is not here today to do us that favour. Tonight we are returning to the subject we've been delving into for the last 4 episodes, and that is Charles Squire's Myths and Legends. Celtic Myth and Legend, Poetry and Romance, published in 1912 and reissued in this Senate facsimile reprint. I am glad to report that I have been perusing the library, as one does when one is surrounded by hundreds of books. I have found that there is quite enough reading material, and I'm relating to material that would be considered out of copyright, where modern books, we can't read the whole lot because we might get a copyright strike. There is tons of material, enough to do us until at least episode 300, I would say, and possibly beyond that. Something that started over 3 years ago and we're still running. I'm going to say hello to a few people before we proceed with the reading. Dennis Dwyer was the first one to comment tonight. He's watching on YouTube from Tala in Dublin. Tala Wincher Partholone, the grave mound of the people of Partholone who all died within, was it a week, of plague. 5,000 of them. And we had that recently, of course, in our discussion of Squire's work. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter is watching from Texas, where it's a beautiful day. Of course, it's always a beautiful day in Texas. 22 Celsius. By God, that's like a decent summer's day in Ireland. Enjoy it. And as I always say, don't forget to spread a few degrees around. Wayne Bird is watching and can't believe how quick Orion moves. And I think heading westward, yes. Well, what happens is the sun, as it moves through the zodiac along the ecliptic is this ring in the sky that the sun appears to pass along as it moves through the zodiac. The sun is moving east all the time. Actually, it's the Earth that's revolving around the sun that is causing the apparent motion of the sun against the background constellations. So it is a curious fact that now in the modern era, on the day of summer solstice, should I say, in the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year, the sun appears, if we can't see the stars, of course, during the day, but if there was a total eclipse of the sun on the 21st of June, we would see the sun above Orion. Orion appears to carry the sun across the sky. He is heading for his summertime meeting with the sun. As the evenings in April pass, Orion, when it gets dark, is getting closer and closer to the southwestern or the western horizon and will vanish into the twilight in early May, only a few weeks away now. And that is always a very good indication that summer has arrived. Once you see the stars coming out and you can't see Orion anymore, you know summer has pretty much arrived. As I say, that's a northern hemisphere thing. Obviously, if you're in Australia, that means we're heading towards your winter solstice. But I wouldn't complain if you were in Australia, because your winter days are probably warmer than our summer days. Rex Fortenberry is watching from a lovely, cool Louisiana. Glad to hear it. And maybe, as I said, Elaine could spare a degree or two to warm it up for you. Mark Guinan is in Offaly. Good evening to you, Mark. Thank you for joining us on Live Irish Myths. Nick Eska Casterton is in the house. So happy to have made it tonight. Well, we are delighted to have your company, Nick, and hello to all the Casterton clan. Archaeoastronomy Database, whose Ty says, "Hi friends, sent me an email the other day that I was supposed to respond to and I didn't, and I forgot, and I will. Thank you for your kind words about the new Metonic Cycle article." Adrian O'Beglin is saying, "Banati na Cosca Orav." August Tufane, Adrian, I hope you are well. Thanks for joining us. Alan Hoskins is in Ballina, Killaloo. And I wonder if you all, I presume most of the Irish viewers had the same service today in terms of the weather. Heavy showers and some sunshine in between. Karen Faye O'Loughlin is in Boulder in Colorado. A perfect spring day, finally. I was speaking to a friend in Colorado last, I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday, and there was a foot of snow on the ground. So I hope that's going to be a thing of the past fairly soon. Barbara Murphy is saying, "GAE of everyone from a nice sunny warm Tucson, Arizona." Good afternoon to you, Barbara. Always a pleasure to welcome another Murphy into the Murphy Library. Mavanway Millward says, "Evening, Anthony and the two. I hope you're all very well and had a lovely Easter. Sorry I missed last week, but look forward to catching up soon." That's perfectly okay. Life goes on outside of Live Irish Myths, and they're all recorded, so you can watch them back. Arvon Gaunt says, "Hello all, good evening to you watching on YouTube. I'm not sure if you've been here before, but you're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. And if you haven't been here before, there's 219 other episodes for you to catch up on. Hope you enjoy that." Anna L is saying, "Good evening to everyone from, I presume, Balbriggan, Balyabrigeen in Igunde, Achlia. Just down the road, as the man says. Anne McCallum is here. Hope everyone's having a lovely long Easter weekend." Yes, indeed. Did a little reading about, I don't know how to pronounce that, Oistra, Anglo-Saxon goddess of rebirth, fertility, light, associated with dawn, therefore with the east and with the spring equinox. Also a shapeshifter, turning herself into a hare. All sorts of interesting connections. Thanks for that, Anne. Sounds fascinating. Absolutely. Barb Jordan is in the house. Good afternoon to you, Barb. Astro is saying 33 Celsius in Tucson, Arizona. I'd give you 10 degrees if I could. Well, why not? 33. Wow. That's, I think, the hottest temperature ever recorded in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. Genevieve Wright is saying hello from the Canadian Rockies. A very good afternoon to you, Genevieve. Thank you for joining us. And Christina O'Shaughnessy is in or near Geneva in Switzerland. Brilliant stuff. A very good evening to you. And thanks for joining us. So, yeah, I've been doing a bit of reading, as I'm inclined to do. And I pulled out some stuff from the library, and I was just amazed at how much material there is for long, not long episodes necessarily, but many episodes, including the wonderful book that I acquired lately, Ancient Legends, Mystic Charms and Superstitions of Ireland by Lady Wilde. There's enough there to make, I would say, probably 8 or 10 episodes. You know? Wow. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Anyway, not to worry. So plenty to look forward to as we head into the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. Something to watch out for over the next week or so. I will be announcing the first of the 2023 Mythical Ireland public tours. You will remember that last year I did a number of public tours, which I believe were very successful, at least on account of the number of people in attendance and the feedback afterwards. We had tours at Douth, for instance, and Fornox. So the summer schedule will be announced shortly. A lot of people actually asking about public tours. I was going to hold one in March, but the weather, to be honest, was just very, very hit and miss. Mostly miss and a lot of rain and cold weather. So I just said, no, we'll get the tours going in earnest when the weather is a little bit better. So hopefully the tours will be monthly from April through probably October. So keep an eye out on the tours page of the Mythical Ireland website. I will copy that link into the chat for you in case you're interested in following up on that. That's just something, as I say, to watch out for. Barbara wants to know who the other person from Tucson is. That's Astro, I think, was it? Yeah, Astro. I don't know who Astro is, actually. Or do I? I'm not sure that I do. Astro is in Tucson, Arizona. And Scott Doherty is, after a 2-week absence, back. Hello, everyone. I missed you all. Well, we missed you, Anne, and it's great to see you. Tom King is in the house. I see Janet Moran is here. Sad to be among the missing for today's episode, but I know where to find you later on. Well, we're sorry that you're not able to hang around, Janet, but of course, it's nice that you get a mention, and we will see you on the rerun. There's Tom's comment. Hello there, Anthony, and the fine people of the Tua. Greetings from King Lou's throne at the Forge of the Smooth Road. Hope all in good fettle. Easter eggs, and it's story time. Enjoy. Hope none of you have overindulged, by the way, on the old chocolate, because there's plenty of it going around. And, well, I hope more than enough for everybody. Astro is Kevin, and a recent transplant to Tucson from the Midwest. Howdy, there you go. Barbara, Astro is Kevin. Thank you for the information, Kevin. What a pleasure. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. You see, I didn't take notes again. I should. I mean, if I was doing things right, I would take notes of to what I was supposed to mention. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but it will probably come up again in conversation. Don't forget that the latest addition to the website is a rather comprehensive article about the Metonic cycle, the 19-year cycle of the moon, and specifically how that cycle could have been observed in the Neolithic, observed, recorded, and maybe those recordings used to predict it into the future. Can you actually overindulge in chocolate, says Elaine? Well, I haven't tried, but as a youngster, I was certainly rather full and sickly on several occasions. Rowan Grove is watching from Denver. Good afternoon, Rowan. Thank you for saying hello on Live Irish Myths, where we are on episode number 220, and we're going back into the world of Charles Squire. The Moon article, funnily enough, has elicited quite a varied response on social media, where at least 50% of the comments were actually about the photography and not about the article, which left me wondering if perhaps the content of the article was a little bit, shall we say, dense. I will admit that it is a reasonably complex subject. I hope that I've explained it in layman's terms sufficiently to allow you to get a good idea of what the cycle is, how it can be seen, and indeed that the videos, the embedded videos, are helpful in some way towards that. There will be an article coming at some point. Really, all of this is about me finding the time to do the work. There will be an article coming soon about the calendar stone at Nouth, Curbstone 52, showing mostly through video how it actually works, how that stone can be used in terms of watching the moon and calculating the Metonic cycle. I think you'll be fascinated by that, so keep an eye out for that. We'll, of course, announce that on the usual social media. Just a reminder that Mythical Ireland is on Facebook. That's the Mythical Ireland page. We also have the Mythical Ireland community, which is a group where you can post, whereas the page is just where I can post and you can comment. We have a group for creatives, anybody who's an artist or a writer or a poet or a sculptor or a musician or any sort of creative, especially if you work in the area of Irish myths and legends, Irish history, Irish landscape, archaeology, monuments, sacred sites, that sort of thing. We're also on Instagram. So the handle in all cases is Mythical Ireland. On Instagram, we're Mythical Ireland, or I'm Mythical Ireland. On Twitter, it's Mythical Ireland. And of course on YouTube, as a lot of you already know, it's Mythical Ireland. The thing I would recommend, Mavanwe, if you're interested in the Metonic article, is to just take it in chunks and to read and reread it. I understand. It's not that the subject is necessarily complex. I don't think it's complex. I think the greatest difficulty is, and the same difficulty that I had when I began looking at all this stuff in the year 2000, thanks to the instruction of Charlie Scribner, among others, was that I hadn't been taught this way of looking at the moon. Modern astronomy books just almost ignore this information. Some of them will talk about the Saros cycle and the Metonic cycle. They'll talk about the length of those cycles. They'll tell you about the difference between the synodic and the tropical or sidereal lunar months. but very little other than that. Very little by way of instruction as to how, well, if I started to watch the moon today, could I, without reference to astronomy books or a telescope or binoculars or any way of, I suppose, observing the moon without, the natural faculties that we have, as in the eyes, would I be able to observe the Metonic cycle? And of course, the answer is that is absolutely yes. 100%. Yes, you could. And in fact, if you read the article, you'll see why I believe that this idea that you had to have been alive for the duration of a 19-year cycle to understand and see it and observe it is not true at all. In fact, after a while, after a number of years of observing, you would probably be able to predict it out into the future. The greatest variable in it, which I didn't emphasize too much in the article because I did think it would get us carried away in minutiae and difficult detail, is the fact that while the synodic month, which takes us from full moon back to full moon again, or first crescent back to first crescent, or last quarter back to last quarter, etc., sometimes appears to be 29 days, but sometimes appears to be 30. And that's because it's actually really 29 and a half days. But sometimes you have to add an extra day. And then, of course, there are the lunar leap years where you have to add an extra moon in order to keep the differential days between the number of lunar months and the solar year as close as possible. Anyway, I hope I've explained it in language that people understand. It's an important one because it gives us an insight into what might have been achievable in prehistory. We're not saying for a second all of these things come with a caveat when we're talking about prehistory, when we're talking about ancient Ireland, when we're talking about megalithic art, when we're talking about the interpretation of mythology. These things are hypothetical to a degree. I can show you how the Metonic cycle works, and I believe I have done in that article. Whether or not people had the gumption, had the intelligence, had the ability to record all of that, I leave that to you to decide. But certainly, it's easily observable. It's just that it requires a different sort of observation than we would be used to in the modern era, when most people are detached, after all, from looking at what the moon is doing, because we have clocks and calendars, and we have a million ways of telling the time. Our computer has it. Our wristwatch has it. Your oven will have it. Your car has a clock. If you think of the myriad ways that we can tell what time it is, and that keeps us on track in the modern era. But before the invention of the clock, before the modern clockwork mechanism, before the digital clock, before the Gregorian and the Julian calendar, how did people regulate time? Well, they did so the natural way, using the moon. Josie Weatherford says, in Camden's Britannia, 1598, he mentions the Irish as praying to the new moon. Well, there you go. Yeah, and I'm very interested in the work of Charles Vallancey, which I intend to make into at least, probably will make several episodes, but I'm lucky to have on loan a copy of Vallancey's Grammar, which was published in the late 18th century. And quite a lot of that focuses on calendrical words relating to months and cycles of time and the sun and the moon. Fascinating stuff. I want to get my head around it first and probably write a blog post about it first before I go live about it. I think you'll find that very interesting. I remember that was 18th century Ireland, when no Irish person, almost every Irish person alive in terms of the indigenous Irish population, could speak fluent Irish, didn't know any English, couldn't read or write. How did they learn all this information? Well, they passed it down from mouth to ear, from mouth to ear, from mouth to ear, from generation to generation. I designed, says Astro, who's Kevin, a bead bracelet with 59 beads that works as a lunar abacus for a 2-month cycle. Fascinating stuff. Podgy Shaw says, Gia Vacarja, I hope Easter finds you all well. It's a showery northwest England, but it is that time of year. Yes, we had the heavy April showers here also. Mariana Dunn is in the car finishing errands for a friend's birthday dinner we're hosting. That sounds very nice. I hope you have live Irish myths playing on the big TV screen during the party. That'll be just a way to ruin it, with maybe a few dad jokes along the way as well. Who am I missing? I don't know if I'm missing anybody. A lot of people chatting to other people, which is always lovely to see. What was I referring to there? I was. I took my wife to the Caribbean last month. Jamaica? No, she wanted to go. Yes. I don't have any other jokes. It's been a poor week for jokes. Saskia's outside and she wants to be let in. We'll have to do that in a moment. Anyway, let us begin. Oh my God, it's 20 past. It couldn't be 20 past 8 already. We haven't just spent 20. Shut up, Anthony, and read. So last week, we finished chapter 6, and I told you that the next chapter, chapter 7, chapter 6 was called The Gods Arrive. The next chapter is called The Rise of the Sun God. I hope you enjoy. Is everybody comfortable? Get ready. I have a small tipple here. Sláinte. I also have some water, which is mostly what I'll be drinking. It was as a result of the loss of his hand in this battle with the Firvolg that Nuada got his name of Arrogant Love. That is, the silver-handed. Now, fascinatingly, I know, here we go, straight off on a tangent. Only one sentence of the book read, and already he's off on a tangent. The Irish for money is arrogant, and will aim arrogant agut, right? And arrogant literally means silver. Have you any silver? So there you go. Nuadu was called Arrogant Love because his arm had been chopped off, as we read last week, by Sreng in the first battle of Moitura. Did it mention the name? Oh, Saskia is... where is Desiree when you need her? For Dian Kecht, the physician of the Tuatha Dé Danann, made him an artificial hand of silver, so skillfully that it moved in all its joints, and was as strong and supple as a real one. Now, I'm not kidding you when I say, if you have seen the Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy, in The Empire Strikes Back, I think it is, Darth Vader is confronted by Luke Skywalker, where Luke finds out that Darth Vader is in fact his father, and Vader chops his arm off, and at the end of the movie you see him getting a new robotic arm. Well, that is based on the Irish story of the Battle of Moitura. I kid you not, 100% fact. I received an email from the book depository, says Anne McCallum. They're closing up shop on April 26th. That's very sad. I hate to hear when bookshops are and booksellers are closing. Not good. But good as it was of its sort, it was a blemish. And according to Celtic custom, Irish custom, no maimed person could sit upon the throne. Nuada was deposed, and the Tuatha Dé Danann went into council to appoint a new king. So before I proceed, folks, I'm going to have to let the dog in. Well, one of the dogs. She is outside, and she's not happy about being outside. Please bear with me while I allow her into the house again. Come on. Come on. You coming? Yeah. Don't stay out there. Don't want to stay in wet cold. Now, Coda, you're going to let Saskia pass through. Coda. That's enough of that guff out of you now. Oh, no. There's no need for that. Oh. One dog passes through and the other tries to play with her and nip at her and do all these things. Anyway. Adina Sparks, running late, but it looks like I just made the start of the reading. Yay, well, we're only a few sentences in, Adina, so welcome. Good afternoon to you. Myros in the... is it... I don't know how you pronounce that. Myros in the Silmarillion. I have it on my shelf. I've never read it. also has his hand cut and replaced with one crafted in metal. There you go. Borrowed from Irish mythology, no doubt. Mr. Tolkien. They agreed that it would be a politic thing for them to conciliate the Fomors, the giants of the sea, and make an alliance with them. So they sent a message to Bres, the son of the Fomorian king Elathan, asking him to come and rule over them. Bres accepted this offer, and they made a marriage between him and Bridget, the daughter of the Dagda, which is fascinating because, we think of the Fomorians all the time. I have been known on some of my tours to say to my audience, when you hear the Fomorians being mentioned, you have to go boo. It's fascinating because Bres, who is Fomorian, marries Bridget, who is Dedanan. And you kind of think to yourself, is this kind of dangerous? But then when you consider the story that we're about to tell about Lugh and his origins, then you sort of step back from it and go, oh, okay. Being partly of Fomorian blood doesn't always make you a baddie, put it that way. Mickey Ansbury is in the house, and we are happy that you have joined us. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths, episode number 220. Wow. At the same time, Cian, the son of Dian Cecht, the physician of the Tuatha Dé Danann, married Ethne, daughter of the Fomor Balor. The story is much more convoluted than that, and we have told it before, and we will possibly get an opportunity to tell it again. But anyway, I better not say too much, because usually when I say something, it's then repeated by the text. So perhaps I should just read. Then Bres was made king and endowed with lands and a palace, and he, on his part, gave hostages that he would abdicate if his rule ever became unpleasing to those who had elected him. Wow. We could be doing with a bit of that in modern politics, but let's not go there. But in spite of all his fair promises, Bres, who belonged in heart to his own fierce people, i.e. the Fomorians, began to oppress his subjects with excessive taxes. He put a tax upon every hearth, upon every kneading trough, and upon every quern, as well as a poll tax of an ounce of gold upon every member of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Grossly unfair. By a crafty trick, too, he obtained the milk of all their cattle. He asked at first only for the produce of any cows which happened to be brown and hairless, and the people of the goddess Danu granted him this cheerfully. You know what? Better do a page count. Yeah, I do a page count just purely so that I can pace things properly, so that I don't either go too quick or too slow. The DH in Mythros is voiced as TH, as in the. Mythros. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ty, who is obviously a bit of a Tolkien fan. Speaking of which, where are the Stephen King fans? Yes, indeed. He asked at first, blah, 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 blah. But Bres passed all the cattle in Ireland between two fires, so that their hair was singed off, and thus obtained the monopoly on the main source of food. Which is fascinating, because that's Idir na Gá Hinne Bhealtaine. Actually, Bealtaine might not be limited in that case. Idir na Gá Hinne Bealtaine, between the two fires of Bealtaine, which is coming up, by the way, the next of the festivals in the eight spoked wheel of the year, to use sort of modern pagan terminology, is Bealtaine, coming up very soon. In fact, we'll be at Ishnok in less than a month's time, celebrating Bealtaine and lighting the fire and having a bit of a hoolie. Looking forward to that. Maybe I'll see some of you there. To earn a livelihood, all the gods, even the greatest, were now forced to labour for him. Ogma, their champion, was sent out to collect firewood, while the Dagda was put to work building forts and castles. And in case it hasn't been explicitly said, ladies and gentlemen, this was rather demeaning work for the luminaries of the Tuatha Dé Danann. J.R.R. Tolkien was an external English examiner at University College Galway. Paul Campbell tells us. Hello, Paul. Wow. Josie Weatherford will be at Ishnock. Brilliant. I will see you there. Myself and Kinger, the king of the smiths, on Goa. One day, when the Dagda was at his task, his son Angus came to him. "You have nearly finished that castle," he said. "What reward do you intend to ask from Bress when it is done?" Good question. The Dagda replied that he had not yet thought of it. "Let me give you some advice," said Angus. "Ask Bress to have all the cattle in Ireland gathered together upon a plain, so that you can pick out one for yourself. He will consent to that. Then choose the black-maned heifer called Ocean." The Dagda finished building the fort and then went to Bress for his reward. "What will you have?" asked Bress. "I want all the cattle in Ireland gathered together upon a plain, so that I may choose one for myself." Bress did this, and the Dagda took the black-maned heifer Angus had told him of. The king, who had expected to be asked very much more, laughed at what he thought was Dagda's simplicity. Never, ladies and gentlemen, never laugh at the apparent simplicity of a king of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Never. But Angus had been wise, as will be seen hereafter. Meanwhile, Bress was infuriating the people of the goddess Danu, the Tuatha Dé Danann, by adding avarice to tyranny. It was for kings to be liberal to all comers. But at the court of Bress, no one ever greased his knife with fat or made his breath smell of ale. Nor were there ever any poets or musicians or jugglers or jesters there to give pleasure to the people, for Bress would distribute no largesse. Next, he cut down the very subsistence of the gods. So scanty was his allowance of food that they began to grow weak with famine. Ogma, through feebleness, could only carry 1/3 of the wood needed for fuel, so that they suffered from cold as well as from hunger. Is this not a mythological episode which echoed later in history? It was at this crisis that two physicians, Meach, the son, and Aramid, the daughter of Dian Cecht, the god of medicine, came to the castle where the dispossessed King Nuada lived. Excuse me. And again. Nuada's porter, blemished like himself, for he had lost an eye, was sitting at the gate, and on his lap was a cat curled up asleep. The porter asked the strangers who they were. "We are good doctors," they said. "If that is so," he replied, "perhaps you can give me a new eye." "Certainly," they said. "We could take one of the eyes of that cat and put it in the place of where your lost eye used to be." "I should be very pleased if you would do that," answered the porter. So Meach and Aramid removed one of the cat's eyes and put it in the hollow where the man's eye had been. The story goes on to say that this was not wholly a benefit to him, for the eye retained its cat's nature, and when the man wished to sleep at nights, the cat's eye was always looking out for mice, while it could hardly be kept awake during the day. Is the author suggesting that cats are nocturnal creatures and sleep a lot during the day? I don't own a cat, but I'm sure some of the cat owners on here will have an opinion. Sotunar is joining us. Good evening and welcome, as is the full Irish Gary. Yes, we will gather on the hill again to light the fire and welcome the sun. Brilliant stuff. Nevertheless, he was pleased at the time and went and told Nuada, who commanded that the doctors who had performed this marvellous cure should be brought to him. As they came in, they heard the king groaning, for Nuada's wrist had festered where the silver hand joined the arm of flesh. Miach asked where Nuada's own hand was, and they told him that it had been buried long ago. But he dug it up and placed it to Nuada's stump and uttered an incantation over it, saying, "Sinew to sinew and nerve to nerve be joined." And in 3 days and nights the hand had renewed itself and fixed itself to the arm, so that Nuada was whole again. A bizarre episode in mythology you will hardly get anywhere else. Yes, they dug his buried hand up and placed it on where it used to be and uttered an incantation over it and made it grow back properly. When Diamcecht, Miach's father, heard of this, he was very angry to think that his son should have excelled him in the art of medicine. Isn't there a variant of this tale in which Miach took herbs from the earth, 365 of them or something like that, and mixed them into some sort of a potion, a healing potion, and put it on Nuada's arm, and that's what made him whole again? I'm not sure. When Diamcecht, Miach's father, heard of this, he was very angry to think that his son should have excelled him in the art of medicine. He sent for him and struck him upon the head with a sword, cutting the skin but not wounding the flesh. Miach easily healed this. So Diamcecht hit him again, this time to the bone. And Miach cured himself. The third time his father smote him. The sword went right through the skull to the membrane of the brain, but even this wound Miach was able to leech. At the fourth stroke, however, Diamcecht cut the brain in two, and Miach could do nothing for that. He died, and Diamcecht buried him. Johnny Wilson has joined us from Dallas, Texas, where we believe it's about 22 degrees. It's in the early 70s Fahrenheit. Sounds lovely over there. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Aha, okay. Thank you. Yes. I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes. Indeed, Mavanwa. Yes, I was misremembering. Mark Gordon has joined us from Iowa. Hello. That charm was talked about in one of my courses at UCD on traditional healing. It's called the bone-to-bone charm, and it's very old. Yes, indeed. And upon his grave there grew 365 stalks of grass, each one a cure for any illness of each of the 365 nerves in a man's body. What about a woman? Aramid, Miach's sister, plucked all these very carefully and arranged them on her mantle according to their properties. But her angry and jealous father overturned the cloak and hopelessly confused them. If it had not been for that act, says the early writer, men would know how to cure every illness and would so be immortal. The healing of Nuada's blemish happened just at the time when all the people of the goddess Danu, the Tuatha Dé Danann, had at last agreed that the exactions and tyranny of Bress could no longer be borne. It was the insult he put on Carpre, son of Ogma, the god of literature, that caused things to come to this head. Poets were always held by the Celts in great honour, and when Carpre, the bard of the Tuatha Dé Danann, went to visit Bress, he expected to be treated with much consideration and fed at the king's own table. But instead of doing so, Bress lodged him in a small, dark room where there was no fire, no bed, and no furniture, except for a mean table on which small cakes of dry bread were put on a little dish for his food. The next morning, what do you think of that, Tom King? No Mound of the Sausages there, no mythical banquet. You wouldn't have it. Shasta Bize is saying Los Angeles in. Shasta, named after Mount Shasta, perhaps. Very good afternoon to our friends in California. Kathy May Dale has joined us on our lunch hour. Happy Monday to you, Kathy May. Thank you for tuning in. The next morning, Carpre rose early and left the palace without having spoken to Bress. It was the custom of poets, when they left a king's court, to utter a panegyric on their host, panegyric being a song or poem in praise of somebody. But Carpre treated Bress instead to a magical satire. It was the first satire ever made in Ireland, and seems to us to bear upon it all the marks of an early effort. Roughly rendered, it said, "No meat on the plates, no milk on the cows, no milk of the cows, no shelter for the belated, no money for the minstrels. May Bress's cheer be what he gives to others." In other words, may he be repaid with his lack of hospitality. Mavanry says, you can't imagine a father who would do this. I wonder where the inspiration for the story of Tien Kek came from. Yes. Abraham. Wasn't it Abraham who was told by God to sacrifice his son? It's like, yeah, no. No thanks. This satire of Carpre's was, we are assured, so virulent that it caused great red blotches to break out all over Bress's face. This in itself constituted a blemish such as should not be upon a king, and the Tuatha Dé Danann called upon Bress to abdicate and let Nuada take the throne again. Bress was obliged to do so. He went back into the country of the Fomors underneath the sea and complained to his father Elathan, its king, asking him to gather an army to reconquer his throne. The Fomors assembled in council, Elathan, Tethra, Balor, Indech, and all the other warriors and chiefs, and they decided to come with a great host and take Ireland away and put it under the sea, where the people of the goddess Danu would never be able to find it again. At the same time, another assembly was also being held at Tara, the capital of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Nuada was celebrating his return to the throne by a feast to his people. While it was at its height, a stranger clothed like a king came to the palace gate. The porter asked him his name and errand. "I am called Lugh," he said. "I am the grandson of Dian Cecht by Cian, my father, and the grandson of Balor by Ethnu, or Ethna, my mother." "But what is your profession?" asked the porter, "for no one is admitted here unless he is a master of some craft." "I am a carpenter," said Lugh. "We have no need of a carpenter. We already have a very good one. His name is Luchdana." "I am an excellent smith," said Lugh. "We do not want a smith. We have a very good one. His name is Goivnew." "I am a professional warrior," said Lugh. "We have no need of one. Ogma is our champion." "I am a harpist," said Lugh. "We have an excellent harpist already." "I am a warrior renowned for skillfulness rather than for mere strength." "We already have a man like that." "I am a poet and tale teller," said Lugh. "We have no need of such. We have a most accomplished poet and tale teller." "I am a sorcerer," said Lugh. "We do not want one. We have numberless sorcerers and druids. One a penny." "I am a physician," said Lugh. "Dian Cecht is our physician." "I am a cupbearer," said Lugh. "We already have 9 of them." I am a worker in bronze. We have no need of you. We already have a worker in bronze. His name is Credney. Then ask the king, said Lou, if he has with him a man who is master of all these crafts at once. For if he has, there is no need for me to come to Tara. So the doorkeeper went inside and told the king that a man had come who called himself Lou the Uldamach, or the master of all arts, and that he claimed to know everything. The king sent out his best chess player to play against the stranger, or ficule as it was known, a game not dissimilar to chess. Lou won, inventing a new move called Lou's Enclosure, the Crow of Lou. I'm sad to report the community. Vandalism at Glen Druid Dolmen, graffiti sprayed inside the tomb on the centre stone, evidence of substance abuse that has been reported to the OPW. Oh, I'm sorry to read that and to hear that. It's happening all over the place, isn't it? Rex said, and I presume he's referring to the hostel or the room that was it Credney Carper stayed in. That wasn't all that inviting. Sounds like a hostel I once stayed in. Samantha Healy is in the house. Good evening, Samantha. Good afternoon. Good evening from the Boyne Valley, where it is twilight. And it is starting to get dark now. I was getting all excited there because it was bright at the beginning of the episode. I'll have to pull the blinds down shortly. Then Nuada invited him in. Lou entered and sat down upon the chair called the Sage's Seat, kept for the wisest man. Ogma the champion was showing off his strength. Upon the floor was a flagstone so large that 80 yokes of oxen would have been needed to move it. Ogma pushed it before him along the hall and out at the door. Then Lou rose from his chair and pushed it back again. But this stone, huge as it was only a portion broken from a still greater rock outside the palace. Lou picked it up and put it back into its place. And I wonder, and I have mentioned this, I don't know whether I wrote this somewhere or I mentioned it on a live stream. It could be in one of my books. I don't actually know, but I wonder whether this reference to the stone being so large that 80 yokes of oxen would have been needed to move it isn't in fact possibly a remembrance, a memory of megalithic monument construction from prehistory, when in fact oxen may well have been yoked, or stones yoked to oxen to move them around. The Tuatha Dé Danann asked him to play the harp to them, that is Lou. So he played the sleep tune, and the king and all his court fell asleep, and did not wake until the same hour of the following day. Next he played a plaintive air, and they all wept. Lastly, he played a measure which sent them into transports of joy. When Nuada, it's spelled here, there are different spellings. Irish technical thinker has joined us. Marcus, good evening, good afternoon, good night, good morning. It's definitely good evening, isn't it? How are you? When Nuada had seen all these numerous talents of Lou, he began to wonder whether one so gifted could not be of great help against the Fomors. He took counsel with the others, and by their advice lent his throne to Lou for 13 days, taking the sage's seat at his side. Really what we're seeing here, we have definitely discussed this before, and there's a video about it and there's a blog post about it on the website, is the fact that Nuadu in the tale really becomes impotent here, and Lou is the one with all of the strength, the power, the conviction to get the job done. Lou summoned all the Tuatha Dé Danann to a council. So really, if Nuadu is the king, he's the one who should be doing that. He should be summoning the Tuatha Dé Danann to a council. But instead it's Lou, because he's effectively become king. The Fomors are certainly going to make war on us, he said. What can each of you do to help? Diamkect, the physician, said, I will completely cure everyone who is wounded, provided his head is not cut off, or his brain or spinal marrow hurt. I, said Govnew the smith, will replace every broken lance and sword with a new one, even though the war lasts 7 years. That is the job, or the wonderful magic, the wonderful skill of the smith. Big bowl of Irish stew. Wow. Big enough to share around, perhaps? Or I had my dinner. But I mean, there may be others who are hungry. Folks, all load into Irish Marcus's house. He has Irish stew on the go. And I will make the lances so well that they shall never miss their mark or fail to kill. Dullof, the smith of the Fomors, cannot do as much as that. The fate of the fighting will be decided by my lances. And I, said Craigne, the bronze worker, will furnish all the rivets for the lances, the hilts for the swords, and the rims and bosses for the shields. Paul Campbell is putting in a request for vegan stew. Sotonar says, I love stew, a little more satisfying than a good multi-day stew. A smith was an alchemist full of magic. Yes, indeed. And I, said Luchtene, the carpenter, will provide all the shields and lance shafts. Ogma, the champion, promised to kill the king of the Fomors with thrice 9 of his followers and to capture 1/3 of his army. And you, O Dagda, said Lou, what will you do? I will fight, said the Dagda, both with force and craft. Wherever the two armies meet, I will crush the bones of the Fomors with my club, till they are like hailstones under a horse's feet. That is the might of the Dagda's huge club, which he was supposed to have dragged around behind him, leaving huge ruts, leaving huge trenches in the landscape. And you, O Morrigu, said Lou. I will pursue them when they flee, she replied, and I always catch what I chase. And you, O Carpra, he puts a father on the last E of all these names, and I don't think that's right, but anyway, I shall continue. And you, O Carpra, son of Eton, or Eton, said Lou to the poet, what can you do? I will pronounce an immediately effective curse upon them. By one of my satires, I will take away all their honour, and, enchanted by me, they shall not be able to stand against our warriors. And ye, O sorcerers, what will ye do? We will hurl by our magic arts, replied Machram, the head sorcerer, the 12 mountains of Ireland at the Fomors. These mountains will be Sliabh Liag, Denna Ulud, the Mourne Mountains, Bree Sliabh Bloom, Sliabh Sneachta, Slemish, Blyshliabh, Neffin, Sliabh Machu Belgadon, Segish, and Crocan Aigle. That's amazing. I didn't know. Dear Segish is also the name of a mountain range, or the Curlew Hills between Roscommon and Sligo. Segish. Fascinating. Crocan Aigle, of course, the last mentioned, was the old pre-Christian name for Croagh-Patrick. Then Lou asked the cup bearers what they would do. They said, we'll just stand here holding cups. No, I should give them a chance to have their speak. We will hide away by magic, they said, the 12 chief lakes and the 12 chief rivers of Ireland from the Fomors, so that they shall not be able to find any water, however thirsty they may be. Those waters will conceal themselves from the Fomors, so that they shall not get a drop, while they will give drink to the people of the goddess Danu as long as the war lasts, even if it lasts 7 years. And they told Lou that the 12 chief lakes were Loch Derg, Loch Limney, which sounds like Limerick, yes, the Shannon Estuary, Loch Corrib, Loch Ree, Loch Mask, Strangford Loch, Loch Lake, Loch Nay, Loch Foyle, Loch Gara, Loch Ray, and Marloch. And that the 12 chief rivers were the Bush, the Boyne, the Bann, the Neve, the Lee, the Shannon, the Moy, the Sligo, the Erne, the Finn, the Liffey, and the Sure. Finally, the druid Figol, son of Mamos, said, I will send 3 streams of fire into the faces of the Fomors, and I will take away 2/3 of their valour and strength. But every breath drawn by the people of the Tuatha De Danann, why does he keep translating it as the people of the goddess Danu? Just call it the Tuatha De Danann. Will only make them more valorous and strong, so that even if the fighting lasts 7 years, they will not be weary of it. All decided to make ready for a war and to give the direction of it to Lugh. And that's the end of the chapter. And despite the slow reading, I've they're not long chapters, so I might as well just keep going. Or will I finish there and come back next week? Let's put it to the popular jury. Nobody ever said, let's leave it there. No more reading, please. We'll come back next week. Everybody always says, yes, more reading, more reading. Just pulling the blinds down. Yes. Yes, there you go. Anya Ryan, who I didn't even know was in the house, is saying more, please. Yes. This is chapter 8, which is called The Gaelic Argonauts. Yo, says Sandra Boothroyd. Yo! Jesus, Anto, this is great. More! See what I mean? Keep going. Encore. Okay. By a very slim margin, the eyes have it by a vote of, let me just do a quick count, 472-0. The Gaelic Argonauts, chapter 8. The preparations for this war. Oh, so I should have said at the end there that Lugh is the one who's being told by the Tuatha De Danann to direct the war on their behalf, not Nuada, who is their king. Rex Fortenberry says, onward and upward. Lead on, Macduff, we shall follow. The preparations for this war are said to have lasted 7 years. Wow. It was during the interval that there befell an episode which might almost be called the Argonautica of the Gaelic mythology. And there's a footnote. This story of the fate of the children of Turin is mentioned in the 9th century Cormac's Glossary. It is found in various Irish and Scottish manuscripts, including the Book of Lecan. The present retelling is from Eugene O'Curry's translation, published in Atlantis, Volume 4. And so the Fate of the Children of Turin is also a book on my shelf, which we will read over several episodes in the future. So there's tons of stuff, as I said. Gordon Farrell has joined us. Hello there, Gordon. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Hope you are keeping well. We always want more reading. Folk nowadays are hungry for the art of the storyteller. Is there a storyteller here? Shall we listen? Go ahead. Oh, it's me. No, I'm only reading. I like the 3 symbols after my name. I haven't a clue what you're talking about, Paul. Sorry. Are there symbols after your name? I do not see them. I do not see them. I do not. In spite of the dethronement of Bress, the Fomors, or the Fomorians, still claimed their annual tribute from the tribe of the goddess Danann, from the Tuatha De Danann, and sent their tax gatherers 9 times 9 in number to Balor's Hill to collect it. But while they waited for the gods to come to tender their submission and their subsidy, they saw a young man approaching them. He was riding upon Splendid Mane, the horse of Manannán, son of Lear, and was dressed in Manannán's breastplate and helmet, through which no weapon could wound their wearer, and he was armed with sword and shield and poisoned darts. Like to the setting sun, says the story, was the splendour of his countenance and his forehead, and they were not able to look in his face for the greatness of his splendour. And no wonder, for he was Lugh the far shooter, or Lugh Lawfada, the new come sun god of the Gaels. He fell upon the Fomorian tax gatherers, killing all but 9 of them, and these he only spared that they may go back to their kinsmen and tell how the gods had received them. Yeah, allow me to get distracted for a moment. I want to go over to Facebook and have a look at Paul Campbell's comments and see if there's a if there are symbols that I can see on Facebook that I can't see here on the streaming app. Little amuses the innocent. Yes, I can see those symbols on Facebook. Yeah, they're Facebook symbols, aren't they? You get you get badges when you interact with pages. You have 3. Rowan Grove has 2. I see. Fascinating stuff. Reading is good too, says Rowan. Yeah. Next best thing to storytelling. Yes. Badges, that's what they are. Anyway, there was consternation in the undersea country. Who can this terrible warrior be? Asked Balor. I know, said Balor's wife. He must be the son of our daughter, Ethna. And I foretell that, since he has cast in his lot with his father's people, we shall never bear rule in Erin again. And she was Catelyn, wasn't it? I'm trying to think of Balor's wife's name, Catelyn. The chiefs of the Fomors saw that this slaughter of their tax gatherers signified that the Tuatha De Danann meant fighting. You're damn right they do, boyo. They held a council to debate on it. There came to it Elathan and Tethra and Indech, kings of the Fomors, Bress himself, and Balor of the stout blows. Catelyn the crooked tooth, Balor's wife, there you go, if I had just read on. Balor's 12 white-mouthed sons, and all the chief Fomorian warriors and druids. Meanwhile, upon earth, Lugh was sending messengers all over Erin to assemble the Tuatha De Danann. Upon this errand went Lugh's father, Cian, who seems to have been a kind of lesser solar deity, son of Diancecht, the god of medicine. As Cian was going over the plain of Muirhevne, which is in the modern county of Louth between the River Boyne and Dundalk, he saw 3 armed warriors approaching him, and when they got nearer, he recognized them as the 3 sons of Tuireann, son of Ogma, whose names were Brian, Jochar, and Jocharva. Between these 3 and Cian, with his brothers Cecha and Cu, there was, for some reason, a private enmity. Cian saw that he was now at a disadvantage. If my brothers were with me, he said to himself, what a fight we would make. But as I am alone, it will be best for me to conceal myself. Looking round, he saw a herd of pigs feeding on the plain. Like all the gods, he had the faculty of shape-shifting. So, striking himself with a magic wand, he changed himself into a pig, joining the herd, and began feeding with them. But he had been seen by the sons of Tuireann. What has become of the warrior who was walking on the plain a moment ago? Said Brian to his brothers. We saw him then, they replied, but we do not know where he is now. Then you have not used the proper vigilance which is needed in time of war, said the elder brother. However, I know what has become of him. He has struck himself with a druidical wand and changed himself into a pig. And there he is, in that herd, rooting up the ground, just like all the other pigs. And I can also tell you who he is. His name is Cian, and you know that he is no friend of ours. It is a pity that he has taken refuge among the pigs, they replied, for they belong to someone of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and even if we were to kill them all, Cian might still escape us. And Brian reproached his brothers. You are very ignorant, he said, if you cannot distinguish a magical beast from a natural beast. However, I will show you. And thereupon he struck his two brothers with his own wand of shape changing, and turned them into two swift, slender hounds, and set them upon the pigs. The magic hounds soon found the magic pig, and drove it out of the herd onto the open plain. Then Brian threw his spear and hit it. The wounded pig came to a stop. It was an evil deed of yours, casting that spear, it cried in a human voice. For I am not a pig, but Cian, son of Dian Cecht. So give me quarter. Iuchar and Iuchar would have granted it and let him go, but their fiercer brother swore that Cian should be put an end to, even if he came back to life 7 times. So Cian tried a fresh ruse. Give me leave, he asked, only to return to my own shape before you slay me. Gladly, replied Brian, for I would much rather kill a man than a pig. So Cian spoke the befitting spell, cast off his pig's disguise, and stood before them in his own shape. You will be obliged to spare my life now, he said. We will not, replied Brian. Then it will be the worst day's work for all of you that you ever did in your lives, he answered. For if you had killed me in the shape of a pig, you would only have had to pay the value of a pig. But if you kill me now, I tell you that there never has been and never will be anyone killed in this world for whose death a greater blood fine will be exacted than for mine. But the sons of Tuireann would not listen to him. They slew him and pounded his body with stones until it was a crushed mass. 6 times they tried to bury him, and the earth cast him back in horror. But the seventh time the mould held him, and they put stones upon him to keep him down. They left him buried there and went to Tara. Meanwhile, Lugh had been expecting his father's return. As he did not come, he determined to go and look for him. He traced him to the plain of Merhevna, and there he was at fault. But the indignant earth itself, which had witnessed the murder, spoke to Lugh and told him everything. So Lugh dug up his father's corpse and made certain how he had come to his death. Then he mourned over him and laid him back in the earth and heaped a barrow over him and set up a pillar with his name on it in Ogham. He went back to Tara and entered the great hall. It was filled with the Tuatha Dé Danann, and among them Lugh saw the 3 sons of Tuireann. So he shook the chief's chain with which the Gaels used to ask for a hearing in an assembly. And when all were silent, he said, allow me to grab a drink. No, that's not what he said. I'm just saying I need to get a drink. A badge of honor, Paul. Absolutely. People of the goddess Danu, I ask you a question. What would be the vengeance that any of you would take upon one who had murdered his father? A great astonishment fell upon them, and Nuada, their king, said, surely it is not your father that has been murdered. It is, replied Lugh, and I am looking at those who murdered him, and they know how they did it better than I do. Then Nuada declared that nothing short of hewing the murderer of his father limb from limb would satisfy him. And all the others said the same, including the sons of Tyrone. Turkeys voting for Christmas. The very ones who did the deed say that, cried Lou. Then let them not leave the hall till they have settled with me about the blood fine to be paid for it. If it was, pardon me, if it was I who had killed your father, said the king, I should think myself lucky if you were willing to accept a fine instead of vengeance. The sons of Tyrone took counsel together in whispers. Yuchar and Yucharva were in favour of admitting their guilt, but Brian was afraid that if they confessed, Lou would withdraw his offer to accept a fine and would demand their deaths. So he stood out and said that, though it was not they who had killed Cian, yet sooner than remain under Lou's anger, as he suspected them, they would pay the same fine as if they had. Certainly you shall pay the fine, said Lou, and I will tell you what it shall be. It is this: 3 apples, and a pig's skin, and a spear, and 2 horses, and a chariot, and 7 pigs, and a hound whelp, and a cooking spit, and 3 shouts on a hill. That is the fine, and if you think it is too much, I will remit some of it, but if you do not think it is too much, then pay it. If it were 100 times that, replied Brian, we should not think it too much. Indeed, it seems so little that I fear there must be some treachery concealed in it. I do not think it too little, replied Lou. Give me your pledge before the people of the goddess Danu that you will pay it faithfully, and I will give you mine that I will ask no more. So the sons of Tyrone bound themselves before the Tuatha Dé Danann to pay the fine to Lou. When they had sworn and given sureties, Lou turned to them again. I will now, he said, explain to you the nature of the fine you have pledged yourselves to pay me, so that you may know whether it is too little or not. And with foreboding hearts, the sons of Tyrone set themselves to listen. The 3 apples I have demanded, he began, are 3 apples from the garden of the Hesperides in the east of the world. You will know them by 3 signs. They are the size of the head of a month-old child. They are of the colour of burnished gold, and they taste of honey. Wounds are healed and diseases cured by eating them, and they do not diminish in any way by being eaten. Whoever casts one of them hits anything he wishes, and then it comes back into his hand. Hey, it's a boomerang apple. Yes. When I throw it away, I don't want it to come back. Who am I quoting there? Yes. When I throw it away, I don't want it to come back. Amy Wallace Dolan, how have I never heard this version of events before? Well, maybe you haven't read Charles Squire. One you definitely need to have in your library. The owners keep them perpetually guarded because of her prophecy. I apologize. That 3 young warriors from the west of the world will come to take them by force, and brave as you may be, I do not think that you will ever get them. The pig's skin that I have demanded is the pig skin of Tuas, king of Greece. It has 2 virtues. Its touch perfectly cures all wounded or sick persons, if only there is any life still left in them. And every stream of water through which it passes is turned into wine for 9 days. Hey! Sounds like something an Irishman would particularly relish. Mark Marnell asks an interesting question, but really, no, I can't get dragged into that right now. But I do actually have views on the use of metal detectors in Ireland. I definitely do. But I just mid story here, and this is kind of probably not the forum for it. But I definitely do. Whether you want to hear those opinions or not is a different matter altogether. I do not think that you will get it from the King of Greece, either with his consent or without it. And you can guess what spear it is that I have demanded, asked Lou. And can you guess what spear it is? We cannot, they said. It is the poisoned spear of Pissiar. P-I-S-E-A-R. Pissiar. Apologies. Apparently it's pronounced Pesar. So I won't say Pissiar again. I just did. It is the poison spear of Pesar, the king of Persia. It is irresistible in battle. It is so fiery that its blade must always be held underwater, lest it destroy the city in which it is kept. You will find it very difficult to obtain. And the two horses in the chariot are the two wonderful horses of, Dobar, king of Sicily. We've definitely read this before. We did, of course, in the very, very earliest episodes, because I remember these pronunciations, they're footnoted. The wonderful horses of Dobar, king of Sicily, which run equally well over land and sea. There are no other horses in the world like them, and no other vehicle equal to the chariot. And the 7 pigs are the pigs of Assel, king of the golden pillars. Though they may be killed every night, they are found alive again the next day. And every person that eats part of them can never be afflicted with any disease. Wow. And the hound whelp I claim is the hound whelp of the king of Oroda. Eroda. There is a long word and there's a short pronunciation. Eroda. Her name is Fallinish. Every wild beast she sees, she catches at once. It will not be easy for you to secure her. The cooking spit which you must get for me is one of the cooking spits of the women of the island of Fincara. Thank God the pronunciations are in the footnotes, which is at the bottom of the sea between Erin and Alba. You also have pledged yourselves to give 3 shouts upon a hill. The hill upon which they must be given is the hill called Knock Midcana. Actually, it's an Irish word that I think I can pronounce. Knock Meochuin. The middle cry or the middle shout. In the north of Lochlan, Meochuin and his sons do not allow shouts to be given on that hill. Besides this, it was they who gave my father his military education, and even if I were to forgive you, they would not. So that, though you achieve all the other adventures, I think that you will fail in this one. Now you know what sort of fine it is that you have bargained to pay me, said Lou, and fear and astonishment fell upon the sons of Turin. Yeah, and we will read the rest of that next week. What sources did Squire use for his book? Unfortunately, yeah, that's, I suppose, one of the big things that lacks in Squire's book. I suppose one of the causes of its downfall is he has an appendix or a bibliography, but he doesn't footnote very much. So for this chapter, which is called the Gaelic Argonauts, does he have a specific? No, he doesn't. So I shall just quickly look in his appendix / bibliography. So he has, among others, H. Darbois de Jubainville, Le cycle mythologique irlandais et le mythologique celtique, volume 2 of the Cours de littérature celtique, Paris 1884. Translated into English, oh my God, it could have saved me the bother, as The Irish Mythological Cycle and Celtic Mythology with Notes by R.I. Best, Dublin, 1903. Alfred Nutt, The Voyage of Bran, son of Feivel, an Irish historic legend of the 9th century. The Fairy Mythology of Shakespeare. Patrick Weston Joyce, Old Celtic Romances, P.W. Joyce. I have that on the shelf here. Lady Gregory, Gods and Fighting Men. Alfred Nutt, Ossian. Oh, he's pronounced it the other way, Ossian. Ossian and the Ossianic Literature. John Gregerson Campbell, Minister of Tyree, The Fian, Stories, Stories, Poems and Traditions of Fionn and His Warrior Band. Alfred Nutt, Cuchulainn, The Irish Achilles. Lady Gregory Cuchulainn of Moorhevna, but that looks like the later stuff. Yeah, doesn't seem to be a whole lot around the Tuatha De Danann. But no, as to specific sources, no. The version that we will read from in the future is I bought it in a sort of a facsimile version. The Fate of the Children of Turin, first published 1901. Richard O'Duffy. Interesting. Let me just quickly see if the who was it that asked me that? I forget. Mavanwe, was it? The King of Persia and Sicily. Let me have a look. Yeah. So that is the King of Sicily is mentioned there, and the King of Greece, and the King of Persia. So I presume that's probably the version. Hang on, yeah, did it actually? Sorry, before I make a complete fool of myself, am I sure that he hasn't given the source for this story? Sorry, yeah. I did. I read it earlier on. I'm so stupid. But the present retelling is from Eugene O'Curry's translation, published in Atlantis, Volume 4. So I'm not sure how close O'Curry's translation is to this Richard O'Duffy version, which was published by the Society for the Preservation of the Irish Language. Beautifully bound. I mean, it's a modern facsimile reprint, but the binding is lovely. Printed and bound in India. Don't forget, folks, if you are looking for older texts that are out of print or out of copyright, that sometimes if you fish around on Amazon or ABE Books or somewhere deeper in the internet, you can sometimes find publishers far afield. If you're willing to wait, I think I waited 4 or 6 weeks for this to arrive at the time. You still can get beautiful versions of them. What was that? The King of Greece or Prince is mentioned in the Dialogue of the Ancients, as in Achalo Shanorach. Yes. What's that book? Sorry, says Mavanwe. Which one? The red one? That one? That one is the Richard O'Duffy version of The Fate of the Children of Turin. Show you that just in case you want to hunt down your own version. Let me just quickly see if I can zoom in on that. Edited by the Society for the Preservation of the Irish Language, with notes, translation, and a complete vocabulary, by Richard J. O'Duffy, Dublin, M.H. Gill and Son, 1901. That's what that is. Well, it's a facsimile reprint of it, and as I say, printed and bound in India, and a beautiful job actually they did of it. I mean, it has the lovely cover, which appears to be some form of Wibbelin, and with the gold imprint, and even then a lovely bookmark ribbon. Is that from Gaian Books? Actually, so let me just check if that's the name of them. No, it appears to be, it says facsimile publisher, facsimilepublisher.com. is the web address, and that's in India. But this is, look, I've said this many times before, and I want to impress it upon you that the wonderful thing now compared to when I began all my research work in 1999, makes me sound old, is that a lot of this work would only be available in university libraries, um, and if you wanted to buy it, uh, you know, original copies, probably hundreds of euros. Now we not only have facsimile reprinting, we also have, there are a lot of websites like archive.org and the Gutenberg, and some others who have PDF scans. Google Books, yeah, but you know, you can download PDFs of these books so that you you can access them much more conveniently. You don't need to have a university library access or anything like that, you know. Um, Bookfinder searches quite a few book dealers, says Rowan Grove. Yeah, I've used that one. It's very handy. Um, yeah, Akel na Shinorok. That was the colloquy of the ancients. Yeah, so I've acquired quite a lot of work that, you know, would otherwise be prohibitively expensive. Like a lot of the annals, you know, I have the annals of the Four Masters and the annals of Ulster. Like, for instance, some of the Dinchanicus, especially the prose Dinchanicus in Revue Celtique. I have some copies of the Zeitschrift, which are again facsimile reprints, and other stuff. So it's a cheaper and easier way of getting access to the original. And because they're facsimile reprints. Now, I do have a small number of books that aren't facsimile reprints. They're like OCR scans, and they're not good. Always try to get the facsimile reprint because you get it exactly as it was presented in the original, with all the footnotes and everything else, and all the correct spellings of the Irish words, you know. But anyway, that's the story. It is nearly 9:30. It is time for us to say farewell once more, until next week. Hope you all have a great week. Oh, Barbara is saying, is it Adol is another good place to search for used books? Yeah, and I think, of course, it depends on where you are as well. I have indeed, during the lockdown year, especially when I was, do you remember when I got the library, the new shelves in? I invested quite a lot in the library in that year. I bought stuff. I bought. There are books there that I actually bought from Australia. I was willing to wait for them to come. It was just the right price and the right condition, you know. Encore, says Paul Campbell. Yeah, next week. Yes, indeed, next week. Next week. As always, keep an eye on the website, particularly on the tours page, for announcements of upcoming public tours, um, you know, and locations where they will be taking place. Um, I will, of course, keep you posted about any other announcements, such as when Blind Boy shares that a conversation we had Saturday a week ago in Drogheda, which is great. Thank you, Anthony. Great storytelling, and thank you for answering all my questions. Catch up on last week's episode. Hope I can join you for a tour this year. That'd be great. Yeah. Sure, it's only a quick hop across the water. Now there's no pandemic, like, you know. Sure, you could probably get a cheap flight from Bristol to Dublin, and you'd be here in half an hour. Rex Fortenberry, thank you. Goduga Lumor Oshla Aguna in Naivja. I'm not sure what all of that means. Joe O'Keefe, I didn't know you were here. Joe, good evening, good night, hello, and goodbye, all in the one. Thanks for a nice afternoon, and to everyone else for adding to the fun, says Barbara. You're very welcome. Always glad to have you all along. Fantastic evening, actually. Great episode. Roll on next week. Good evening, all. Yeah, and we might even shake it up for a week or two with some different material. Don't forget, I'm not sure if the tickets for Ishnock are still on sale or are they sold out. I know they sold out last year. I don't want to say book your tickets if it's sold out. Let me just check. Dalton Fire Festival 2023. Book now. Okay, it seems that you can still book. So I'll share that link just before I go, in case any of you, especially those of you in Ireland who are sort of half thinking of going, or you may have thought about it a couple of months ago, but time is flying around. Get your ticket now before they're all gone. That's ishnock.ie, and it's in the events there, Bealtaine Fire Festival. The Blind Boy YouTube will be available. No, it's not a YouTube. It's not a video, Paul. It's an audio recording, a podcast. But he podcasts on Spotify and Podbean and Apple and all those. So, but we will share the link once it's published. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, friends of the tour. Always a pleasure. Take care. Until next time, says Tom King in the Forge of the Smooth Road in Bohermeen. And myself and Tom will be at Ishnock together. Looking forward to that. That'll be good crack, Tom. It was good crack last year. It's great to meet so many of the tour, actually. Looking forward to seeing some of you again. Anyway, I better go. You'd swear this is the only thing going on in life. You know, I've got to go and read. Marcus is here. You weren't here earlier when I mentioned it at the very beginning. Marcus. I am on page 690 of it. I managed to stick with it. Stick with it. Stick with Pennywise. Amy Wallace Dolan says night all night. Very good night to you from here. Yeah, and everybody's disappearing because they're wondering when is he going to stop and actually just finish the episode rather than keep waffling on. But Marcus, if you're there, I'm still reading it and still enjoying it. Can't believe it's only taken me for 86, 15 and 20, 30, 38, 37. It's only taken me 37 years to get around to it. We need a joke, says Tom. Yeah. I asked Siri last night. I said, Siri, why am I so bad with women? She said, this is Alexa. And with that, I shall say goodnight. Ikowa Kulasov, Slong the Foal, and most importantly, my good people, Toga Bugay, take it easy.